This happened about 4 years ago. Back then, I lived in a modest little house with my wife and our 2 young kids. The neighborhood was quiet too, filled with other families like ours, and we'd gotten used to the comfort of routine. Every night was more or less the same. I made sure to lock everything up, front door, back door, windows, even the garage. I was meticulous about it, maybe even obsessive. I just wanted my family to be safe. That's always been a non-negotiable priority for me. By 8 o'clock, we'd usually be sitting down to dinner. Nothing extravagant, just a quiet meal, maybe some light conversation. After that, we'd all gather in the living room, watch a bit of TV, then head off to bed around 10. But one night, things started to change. It began with this noise, a subtle, repetitive sound. Not loud, just persistent, almost rhythmic. At first, I chalked it up to the usual creaks and groans of an older house settling. Maybe the pipes or the wind playing tricks. But the sound kept happening. Always at night. Always when the house should have been quiet. I didn't panic, but I didn't ignore it either. I double-checked the locks, walked through the house, listening carefully. I stood in the hallway, just staring into the dark, trying to place the source. The sound was odd, like footsteps, but dragging, slow, unsteady. Not something you'd confuse with the hum of an appliance or a squirrel on the roof. Eventually, I decided to set up security cameras. Nothing elaborate, just a few indoor cams placed in the common areas. I told my wife it was just for peace of mind, nothing serious. But honestly, I needed answers. I wasn't scared, not exactly, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. A few days later, my Amazon order arrived. I spent the afternoon installing the cameras, living room, kitchen, hallway, anywhere someone could pass through at night. I tested them out, checked the angles, and then forgot about them. For a while, nothing happened. The house was quiet. Again. I started to feel silly for even setting them up. Then one morning I was reviewing the footage out of curiosity. I didn't expect to see anything. Maybe the cat knocking something over or a flickering light. But what I saw made my blood run cold. There in the dining room, sometime around 2:43 a.m., was a woman. An old woman, hunched over, wearing what looked like layers of filthy rags. Her hair was thin and wild, her skin pale and wrinkled like parchment. She just stood there, not moving at first, and then she started pacing, slowly, deliberately, almost like she was studying the room. I watched the footage over and over, not saying a word. She was real, not a shadow, not a trick of the light. Real. And none of us had noticed her. No alarm had gone off. She had been inside our home, walking through our dining room while we were asleep just down the hall. I couldn't understand it. How had she gotten in? And why didn't we hear her? Those questions gnawed at me. I didn't want to tell my wife. Just yet, I didn't want to scare her or the kids, but I knew I had to act. That very day, I went into full protection mode. Replaced the locks, reinforced every door, screwed the windows shut, even though it meant giving up fresh air. I installed additional motion sensors and changed the passcodes. I wasn't taking any more chances, and for a while, things got better. The house was silent again. No noises, no strange feelings. I told myself it had just been a one-time thing, a sick trespasser who somehow found her way in and left without taking anything. Maybe she was confused. Maybe she was homeless. That's what I kept telling myself. But then, about a week later, something happened that I still can't explain. It was around 3 a.m. I woke up parched, my mouth dry like sandpaper. I got out of bed quietly so I wouldn't wake my wife and padded down the hallway toward the kitchen. The house was dark, the kind of dark where you can't see more than a few feet ahead. My footsteps echoed faintly on the old wooden floorboards, each creak reminding me I wasn't alone. As I turned the corner into the kitchen, I stopped dead in my tracks. She was there. The old woman, exactly as I'd seen her on the footage, was standing in the kitchen doorway. Not moving, not blinking, just staring at me. I froze. Every muscle in my body locked up. I must have stumbled backward because the next thing I remember, I was on the floor. The impact knocked the wind out of me, and in the confusion, I lost sight of her. until she was suddenly right on top of me. She moved fast, faster than she should have. In one fluid motion, she raised something, a vase maybe, and brought it crashing down. I barely raised my arm in time to shield myself, but the blow stunned me. Before I could react, I felt her claw-like hands on my face, her nails dragging across my skin. It was like being scratched by glass. My vision blurred instantly. I couldn't see. I couldn't think. There was this horrible coldness, not just physical, but wrong. Like she wasn't just touching me, but pulling something out of me. I was panicking, flailing blindly, bleeding, gasping for breath. And then with one desperate push, I shoved her off me, hard. She fell back, though I didn't hear her hit the ground, and suddenly she was gone. Just like that. I lay there for what felt like forever, trying to make sense of what had just happened. My eyes were burning, tears and blood clouding my vision. I couldn't open them fully. I was half blind, disoriented, and terrified. But I was alive, and she was gone. For now, I could barely move. The pain radiating from my face and eyes was unbearable, sharp, hot like my skin was on fire and my vision had been torn apart. But I knew I couldn't stop. I couldn't lie there and do nothing. My family was still in danger, so I screamed. With everything I had left in my lungs, I screamed, "Raquel, help! There's someone in the house!" My voice cracked with desperation. And then, just seconds later, a scream tore through the silence, piercing and raw. It came from the kids' room. My heart stopped. It was Raquel. That sound jolted me harder than any physical blow. I forced myself to my feet, stumbling forward, half blind, my legs barely cooperating. I clawed my way to the stairs, dragging myself. Up each step, one hand on the banister, the other stretched ahead to guide me through the blurry darkness. Raquel's screams echoed through the hallway. They gave me strength I didn't know I had. I reached the bedroom door and fumbled for the knob. My fingers finally found it. I pushed it open. What I saw inside froze me. Raquel stood paralyzed, staring at something behind her. Her face was pale, her mouth slightly open, as if the scream had just died on her lips. I followed her gaze, and there, in the middle of the room, was the old woman. She was holding our 1-year-old son, Josh, cradling him like a deranged mother. Her face was twisted in a grotesque smile, her eyes wild with some unnatural possession. Her thin arms wrapped around him tightly, and she rocked slightly back and forth. "No one will take my son," she rasped, her voice gravelly and cold. "He's mine." She looked directly at me when she said it, and my insides twisted. It felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. "Let him go," I shouted, trying to step forward, but my legs wobbled, the pain blurring everything. "That's not your child." She didn't move, didn't even blink. Then out of nowhere, Raquel snapped, "Give me my son back, you old bitch," she screamed. With no hesitation, she launched herself at the woman. I'd never seen Raquel like that, fierce, unrelenting. She was a mother protecting her child, and nothing in this world was going to stop her. She tore at the woman's hair with one hand, her other arm reaching desperately for Josh, who had woken and was now screaming in panic. The woman fought back, with surprising strength, hissing and flailing, but Raquel didn't let go. It was like watching a wild animal fight for its cub. The two of them struggled, and for a horrifying moment, I thought the old woman might overpower her. She looked longer somehow, unnaturally stretched like something not entirely human, but Raquel wouldn't back down. "You don't have the right," the old woman shrieked. "He's mine." "No," Raquel screamed. "He's our son." And somehow, with all the strength in her, she yanked Josh from the woman's grasp. He slipped free and clung to her, sobbing into her shoulder. The old woman's face changed then. Her eyes flared with fury and her mouth curled into a snarl. She looked like a cornered beast. I stepped between her and Raquel, my body aching, vision still hazy, but I had to give my wife time to get away. She stared at me for a long moment, then laughed. It was a twisted, hollow sound. And then she lunged. I braced for the impact, and when it came, it knocked the wind out of me. She was impossibly strong, her hands clawing at my face again, trying to bring me down. I could barely stand. Still dizzy, still bleeding, but somehow I held my ground. "Raquel!" I shouted. "The window!" She understood instantly. We moved together, pushing the woman toward the far side of the room. My arms trembled, nearly giving out, but I forced myself to keep going. Raquel joined me, and with one final surge of adrenaline, we shoved her hard. She hit the window with a crash, glass shattering everywhere, and tumbled out. I watched her body fall, her scream swallowed by the night. Then, silence. It was over. I dropped to my knees, gasping, heart pounding, the room around me spinning. Raquel stood beside me, still holding Josh, her face streaked with tears and sweat. Neither of us said anything. We just looked at each other, stunned, unable to comprehend what had just happened. The silence in the house was deafening. No more footsteps, no more whispers, just the sound of our son crying softly in his mother's arms. I snapped. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I yanked my hand from his and took off running. My heart pounded as I sprinted down the street, streetlights streaking past in a blur. Why a cemetery? Was this some twisted joke? Or worse? Was I just another story he planned to tell his friends? "Hey, remember that girl I lured to the graveyard?" I didn't stop running. But the cemetery was massive, the black wrought iron fence stretching endlessly along the sidewalk. I felt like I was trapped in some looping dream, with no end in sight. Eventually, I spotted someone up ahead. A man, dressed in black from head to toe, standing beneath a flickering street lamp. Reluctantly, I slowed down. "Hey," I called out, breathless. "Can you help me? I'm trying to get back to the city center." He turned to me with a faint smile. "You're in luck," he said. "Cherry and Elmer are just on the other side of the cemetery." "I know. A shortcut, I walk this way all the time." Before I could answer, he turned and started walking toward a side gate in the cemetery's wall. I hesitated. The rational part of me screamed, "Don't follow him," but I didn't want to risk running into Justin again, and this guy seemed normal, calm, even helpful. I followed. The gate creaked open, and we stepped inside. The air felt different immediately, colder, heavier. The path was narrow, overgrown in places, and the gravestones were so close together they felt like teeth in an open mouth. "It's just up ahead," the man said, not looking back. I glanced at a freshly dug grave as we passed. An empty hole, beside a stone that still gleamed like polished bone. A shiver slid down my spine. Something about this didn't feel right. "I think I should go back," I said suddenly, halting. "My friends are probably wondering where I am." He stopped, turned slowly, and stared at me. "You didn't mention friends before." "Yes, yeah, I did," I stammered. "They're waiting for me, nearby." He stared for a long moment, and then smiled, too slowly. The rain started then, sudden and cold, soaking through my sweater. I wrapped my arms around myself and turned to go. He didn't follow. For a second, I felt relief. Then I heard footsteps. Fast. A hand grabbed my wrist like a vice. "Who said you could leave?" My stomach dropped. I just want to go back to my friends," I said, my voice cracking. Thunder cracked across the sky, followed by a flash of lightning that lit up his face. And that grin. "There are no friends," he said. "No one else would come to a cemetery in the middle of a rainy night," he chuckled. "Except you." Panic seized me. I struggled, yanking and twisting, trying to pull away. "Let go of me," I screamed. He laughed harder. I clawed at his arm, kicked at his legs, anything to break free. But he held tight, dragging me deeper into the dark rows of graves. I don't know how, but something primal in me snapped. I twisted my body hard and jammed my knee into his side. He groaned. His grip loosened just enough, and I tore free. And I ran. Through the rain, past the graves, heart thundering louder than the storm. I didn't look back. He dragged me with increasing force, his fingers digging into my wrist like iron shackles. The cemetery was silent except for the slap of our footsteps against the wet grass and the soft patter of rain still falling around us. My heart slammed against my ribs, terror clawing at my throat. We stopped at the edge of an open grave. It was a perfect rectangle, clean-cut, almost 2 meters deep, the earth damp and black. 2 shovels leaned casually against the side like props in some twisted play. He turned to me, expression unreadable. "Do you want to jump?" he asked, voice flat. "Or would you prefer I push you in?" My scream tore through the night. "No, please." I shrieked, kicking and twisting, but he wrapped both arms around me now, dragging me closer. "Don't worry," he whispered into my ear, his breath cold. "You won't go in alone. I'll join you. Though." He paused, his lips curling into a sinister smile. "After what we do in there, I'm afraid only one of us will come back out." Then, he winked, maliciously, like it was some kind of game. I knew exactly what he meant. I didn't need details. The implication was more than enough. I screamed, louder, desperate, my throat raw. I thrashed and kicked, raked my nails across his hands, but he was too strong. The grave loomed closer, a silent mouth ready to swallow me whole. But just as his feet slid to the edge of the pit, his grip faltered. He froze. His hands weakened, and before I could fully register it, he lost balance, staggering, and fell into the grave with a heavy, sickening thud. I stood trembling, unsure what had just happened. My breath caught in my chest as I looked up. Justin was there, standing less than 2 meters away, a shovel gripped tightly in both hands. His chest heaved with exertion, and his eyes flickered with something I couldn't place, something wild. I looked down into the hole. The man was still conscious, but just barely. A deep gash split across his forehead, blood oozing down his temple as he groaned, dazed and disoriented. "Let me out," he murmured, his voice ragged and low. Justin stepped closer and looked down at him. "Who the hell was that guy?" he asked me, still catching his breath. I don't know," I whispered. My voice felt far away. "He just grabbed me, dragged me here. I thought he was going to kill me." From inside the grave, the man started muttering again, slurring his words. At first I didn't understand, but then I caught fragments. He was threatening us. "You assaulted me," he growled weakly. "You'll pay for this. I'm going." To the police, he claimed it was all a joke, that he'd just been messing around, that we had overreacted. Justin stared down at him silently, eyes narrowing. "So if we let you out," he asked quietly, "you're going straight to the cops? You'll report us?" "Yes," the man snapped. Justin nodded slowly. "Okay." Then, he lifted the shovel and started throwing dirt into the grave. What are you doing?" I gasped, my voice cracking. Justin didn't look at me. He kept shoveling. "You heard him. He's going to turn this into a police case. You really think we can let him out after that?" The man in the grave started screaming, thrashing weakly as the dirt hit him. "I was joking," he yelled. "Please, I won't say anything. I swear." Justin turned to me. His hair was plastered to his forehead, and rainwater dripped from his chin. His eyes met mine, calm and strangely warm. "Do you want to help?" I stared at him. Was this really happening? Part of me wanted to run, to scream, but I didn't move. I just stood there, watching him. And then, I nodded. I don't know why. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was relief. Maybe it was the quiet conviction in his eyes that made me believe he was right, that this man was a predator who had chosen the wrong girl. So I picked up the second shovel. I won't pretend it felt normal. Every scoop of dirt made my stomach twist, made my hands tremble. But I also won't pretend I felt guilty. Not really. This man had dragged me here to kill me, or worse. I saw it in his eyes, heard it in his voice. And in the back of my mind, a darker thought began to form. How many others had he done this to? How many girls hadn't been as lucky as me? I kept shoveling. It took 10 minutes for him to stop screaming, another 20 to fill the rest of the hole. The silence afterward was deafening. The rain had eased into a light drizzle and the moon broke through the clouds in thin silver beams. Justin placed the shovels back where we'd found them, carefully, almost reverently. The rain would erase the rest. Justin turned to me, soaked, muddy, and somehow still beautiful. He smiled almost shyly. "Well," he said, "can I show you my favorite place now?" This time I nodded without hesitation. He led me deeper into the cemetery. The path curved through the oldest section, where the tombstones were crooked and covered in ivy. Eventually, we stopped in front of a marble mausoleum, ornate with two statues carved on either side. They were kissing, frozen in stone, eternal. There was a bench nearby and Justin sat down. I joined him, our wet clothes sticking to the cold marble. We sat in silence for a while, our shoulders touching. "This is theirs," he said softly. "She was the daughter of a noble family. He was a freed slave. They fell in love, but her family forced her to marry an English landowner. So, they met here one night and took their lives together, just like Romeo and Juliet." I looked at the statues again. There was something haunting and beautiful about them, two people defying the world for love, even in death. Justin really was a romantic, a dark one, but still. After that night, we became inseparable. We started dating. Seriously. He helped me find my voice, made me feel like I was worth something. As for the man we buried, I don't know what became of him. Maybe someone found the body. Maybe no one ever did, but no one traced it back to us. And honestly, I don't feel bad. The world hung around, maybe sneaking over to mess with me. But the longer I stared, the more my gut told me something was off. It was the way the figure moved, or didn't. It didn't shift or fidget like a person would. Instead, it just lingered, still, watching. And then it moved, but not like walking. It sort of slid from one row to the next like it wasn't touching the ground. My curiosity warred with fear. I should have called security. Maybe even the police. But something in me, a dangerous mix of boredom and adrenaline, made me want to see what it was, or who. I started walking back the way I came, careful, slow. The air grew colder with every step, and the silence was thick, unnatural. No hum of forklifts, no scurrying rats, not even the buzz of fluorescent lights. I strained to hear footsteps, anything. Nothing. Then a voice rang out. High-pitched, playful, echoing. "I hide better than anyone else. The world has hidden me from you." It sounded like a child. My heart jumped into my throat. I whipped around, eyes scanning the shadows where the voice had come from. And that's when I saw him. A boy, maybe 8 years old, standing just outside the range of the overhead light. His skin was pale, almost bluish under the warehouse lighting. His eyes were huge, wide and glassy like a doll's. And his smile, it stretched across his face in a way that didn't look right, like skin trying to imitate expression. The air around him felt wrong. I didn't even have time to react before he darted sideways, vanishing between the shelves in a blur. Instinct kicked in. I backed toward the exit, only to realize he'd gone in that direction. If I wanted out, I'd have to go through him. My hands were shaking. I reached into my pocket and wrapped my fingers around my box cutter, flipping the blade out with a faint click. Useless, but it felt better than nothing. The warehouse suddenly felt enormous, like it had stretched out while I wasn't looking. Every step forward took forever. The corridor twisted endlessly, rows and rows of shelves swallowing me up. I stayed close to the walls, scanning for emergency lights, doors, anything, but it was just darkness and silence. Until a noise snapped through the stillness. Not a crash, just soft rustling, boxes shifting in ways they shouldn't. Then, footsteps. Light, soft, like bare feet on concrete. But they were everywhere. Above me, beside me, behind me. My brain couldn't place them. It was like the sound was chasing itself in circles around me. I crept forward, heart pounding, hands slick with sweat. The box cutter shook slightly in my grip. My every nerve was screaming for me to run, but my legs refused. I kept expecting him to leap out, nothing, just empty aisles and cold air. Then right behind me, a whisper close enough that I could feel it on my neck. "You're wrong." I spun around fast, too fast, and there he was again. The boy. This time he held a length of rusted metal pipe in his small hands, twirling it like a toy baton. His grin was still there, wider if that was even possible, and his eyes locked onto mine like they could see straight through me. "You're losing," he said simply. Then he rushed at me. I reacted without thinking, shoving him with everything I had, but he didn't fall. He barely even moved. Just laughed, high-pitched and echoing like he was having the time of his life. Pain shot through my legs. I didn't even see what hit me. I turned and bolted, weaving through the maze of shelves trying to escape. But the layout had changed. It didn't make sense. Every turn brought me back to the same spot or a dead end. The shelves seemed to shift behind me as if the warehouse was playing with me. And behind me, the crashing started. Loud, chaotic, rhythmic. The boy was slamming the metal pipe against the shelves as he followed. Boom, boom, boom. Each strike rang through the vast space, closing in. It wasn't a prank. It wasn't a dream. That thing wasn't a child. And I wasn't getting out unless I found a way to break whatever nightmare this place had become. The pipe clanged against the metal shelves again. Boom, sending a deep, echoing vibration that rippled through the entire warehouse. The sound bounced off the steel and concrete, filling every corner. It wasn't just close anymore. It was everywhere. Like the building itself was amplifying it, carrying it through the air vents and rafters. My breathing turned ragged. That thing, whatever it was getting closer, and I could feel its presence crawling up my spine. All I knew in that moment was that I had to get out. Now. I took off, my boots slamming against the concrete, sprinting, down the corridors and pivoting sharply around every corner. I didn't care which direction I was going, I just had to put distance between me and it too. I zigzagged between towering pallets and shadow-drenched aisles, crashing into shelves, knocking over boxes. Every noise I made seemed to invite something darker to follow, but I kept going. And then, suddenly, it all stopped. No footsteps. No laughter. No screech of metal on metal. Just silence, still. Oppressive. Wrong. That's when I saw the red-lit sign overhead. The emergency exit. My heart nearly burst with relief. I lunged at the door, slammed my fist against the crash bar. Clunk. Nothing. I hit it again, harder. Clunk. Still nothing. It didn't open. The bar gave resistance, but the door didn't budge. I tried again, putting my full weight into it, but it was locked. From the outside. Someone, something, had locked me in. A sharp, metallic bang rang out behind me, loud, too loud. And then, footsteps, fast, heavy, slapping the concrete, getting closer. Panic surged. I turned and bolted back toward the main entrance. The only other door I knew wasn't chained shut. I could feel my pulse in my ears, my lungs were burning. As I rounded the final corner, I heard that voice again, high, gleeful, echoing inside my skull. "You can't find me," it sang. Then, crash. A blur of movement from the left. A shelving unit collapsed beside me, and something slammed into my skull. Pain exploded through my head. I hit the ground hard, vision flickering with static. Dazed, confused, I struggled to process what had just happened. The taste of blood filled my mouth. My ears were ringing. Everything hurt. Especially my head and ribs. I couldn't breathe right. Sharp pain stabbed through my side every time I tried. Still, somehow I forced myself to crawl, groaning, inching out from beneath the edge of the fallen shelf. I tried to get to my feet and screamed. A raw, involuntary sound tore from my throat. My ribs were wrecked. I could barely move. Then, I heard it again. Movement. Fast. Coming at me. I rolled to the side just in time. His swing missed. This time I didn't run. I grabbed the nearest thing I could reach, a rust-covered pallet truck, and with every ounce of strength I had left, I swung it at him. The metal connected with a sickening crack against his leg. He shrieked, an inhuman, twisted howl, and collapsed into the shadows. I didn't wait to see if he got back up. I ran, limping, staggering, wheezing. I ran until the front doors came into view. I slammed them open and burst into the cold night air. It felt like fire in my lungs, but I kept going. Down the gravel road and toward the main street where the dim glow of a street lamp flickered in the distance. I didn't stop until I reached it. I called the police from there, my hands shaking, so badly I could barely dial. When they arrived, I was still trembling. I told them everything. The boy, the voice, the pipe, the shelves. I expected disbelief, sure, but not this. They found nothing. No signs of forced entry, no strange child, no pipe. The shelves were upright and neatly in place like they'd never moved, not even footprints in the dust. I begged them to check the security cameras. When they did, I stood behind the screen, breath held, certain that something, anything, would prove I wasn't crazy. But what the footage showed was me, only me, running wildly through the warehouse, talking to myself, swinging at empty air, screaming, crawling, falling. One of the officers gently told me I seemed to have experienced a psychotic episode. The others didn't say much, just nods, tight expressions, thinly veiled pity. They left after an hour, saying to call again if anything else unusual occurred. I didn't sleep that night. In the morning, I went to talk to my supervisor, hoping for some kind of explanation, or at least validation. But when I got there, the warehouse was shut down, padlocked, abandoned. No one around out by then, probably when he tampered with the box, and my eyes had slowly adjusted to the dark. Shadows had shapes now, outlines, and I could see his figure moving toward the front entrance. He had no idea I was just on the other side of the wall. If he left, if he just slipped out that door, I'd know I was safe. I held my breath, praying he would just go. He reached for the doorknob and turned it slowly, testing it. Nothing. Locked. I heard him whisper something under his breath, a frustrated string of words I couldn't make out. Then he jiggled the knob again, more aggressively this time. The desperation in his movements gave him away. He was unarmed. If he had anything dangerous, he wouldn't be fumbling at the door like a trapped animal. He'd have come for me already. Took a silent step backward, careful not to let the floor creak, and reached for the fireplace poker resting beside the hearth. My fingers wrapped around the cold iron. My heart was hammering against my ribs. He was still trying the door, still unaware. I moved closer, silent, steady. One step. Another. And then I swung. The first blow caught him on the shoulder. He stumbled. I didn't wait. I struck again, harder this time. He let out a short grunt of pain and dropped to one knee. The third blow hit his back, and he collapsed forward with a heavy thud onto the floor. That's when headlights flashed through, the windows, my parents. Finally. I dropped the poker and backed away from the crumpled figure on the ground. The door creaked open a few centimeters before his body blocked it from swinging further. Still crouched, heart still racing, I looked up. My dad's face appeared in the narrow gap. "Jocelyn? Honey, are you okay?" His voice was tight with concern, his eyes scanning the shadows, living room, and my entire world stopped. There was a man standing by the dining table. I had never seen him before in my life. He looked to be in his late 40s, maybe older, dressed in a wrinkled button-down shirt and dark slacks that didn't quite fit. In his hands, he held a camera, completely ruined. The lens was shattered, jagged pieces of glass glinting under the pale light, the plastic body cracked like dry earth. He stood there, calm as stone, like he belonged. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I stared at him, my mouth open slightly, heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. He looked up slowly and met my eyes. There was something off about his expression, too calm, too composed, and his eyes, they gleamed with something unspoken, something wrong. Who are you? I managed to stammer, trying hard to keep the tremble out of my voice. The man's lips curved into a soft, almost affectionate smile. "Ah, my dear nephew," he said, his tone disturbingly gentle. "What a joy to finally meet you. I am your uncle. How good it is to see your beautiful face." The room swayed around me. My uncle? No. I didn't have an uncle. At least none I'd ever heard of. The words sounded sweet, but they dripped with poison. It felt like a lie, one coated in honey to make me swallow it easier. I don't know you," I said, taking a cautious step back. Every cell in my body screamed to run. He tilted his head, watching me with amusement like I was a puzzle he'd already solved. "That hurts, truly, but that's all right. We'll get to know each other now." I tried to bolt, to turn, to flee, but he moved before I could blink. His hand clamped onto my arm with shocking strength, the kind that didn't match his calm demeanor. My skin burned under his grip. I tried to pull away, but it was like trying to break out of steel. "Let me go," I cried, panic rising fast. "Please, let me go." He leaned in closer, his breath warm and sickening against my ear. "Oh, my sweet nephew," he whispered. "Do you really think you can escape your destiny that easily? Didn't you miss the uncle you never knew? Maybe it's time we bonded a little. That's what family does, right?" I felt the blood drain from my face. His voice was velvet wrapped around razor blades. I didn't fully understand what he meant, but every instinct I had told me it was dangerous, that he was dangerous. "I'm scared," I said in a whisper. "Please, just wait until my parents come home. I don't even know who you are." "Oh, I know," he said with a small laugh. "They never told you." Shifted, I kicked him hard in the leg and tore myself free. He grunted in surprise, stumbling just enough for me to bolt. I didn't think, I just ran, heart slamming against my ribs like a trapped animal. Down the hall, adrenaline blinding me, I spotted the narrow hallway cupboard and dove inside, slamming the door shut behind me. It was pitch black. I curled into the tightest ball I could manage, my breath shallow, my back pressed hard against the wall. The silence pressed in, thick and suffocating. Then I heard them. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate. The floorboards creaked under his weight as he walked, step by step, down the hall. Tap, creak, tap. Each sound was a death knell. My entire body was tense, trembling, as I listened to him draw, closer. I held my breath, praying he wouldn't hear the frantic pounding of my heart. Then, he stopped, right in front of the cupboard door. I heard his voice, low, velvety, crawling through the cracks of the wooden door, and in that moment, I understood something horrifying. I hadn't escaped him. He had let me go. This wasn't a chase I had won. This was his game, and I was still playing it. "Oh, little nephew," he crooned softly, his tone disturbingly playful. "You hide very well in the dark, but I can hear your heart, I can smell your fear, and I'm going to find you." A light knock, just the backs of his fingers brushing the door, made it creak slightly, and I flinched. Every second felt like it was stretching into infinity. My chest burned as I struggled to slow my breathing, to be invisible, to disappear into the dark. The door creaked open. Just a crack, then more. The hallway light spilled in, and his silhouette filled the space. His cold, dead eyes locked on mine. Eyes that didn't blink, didn't flinch, only stared as if he were memorizing my soul. He stepped into the closet slowly, deliberately, and I couldn't move. My body betrayed me, frozen in place while my mind screamed to run, to fight, to do anything. "Tsk, tsk," he whispered. "Seems you've lost, my dear. Though, there is something poetic about it. After all, we are bound by blood. You can't hide from me. I know you. I can smell you. His hand reached out and I saw the fingers first. Long, pale, trembling with anticipation. When they touched my neck, they were colder than I imagined. Ice, squeezing slowly, deliberately. He was savoring every heartbeat of my terror. "Don't resist," he said gently, as if offering advice. "That's life. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose." My lungs screamed for air, but then a siren. Distant at first, then growing louder, urgent, wailing like a warning from the world itself. Red and blue lights flashed through the slits of the closet door. Then, boom, the front door slammed. Open. Boots thundered across the floor, loud voices cutting through the nightmare. The man, my so-called, knows the truth. It's not the ghost you need to worry about. It's people. People are unpredictable. People are dangerous. And with that in mind, let me tell you about Paulo, the apprentice. After a year on the job, I was promoted. It wasn't anything glamorous, but it came with a bit more pay and the responsibility of training new hires. Most of the rookies were green, but decent. Some were just plain odd. I learned to expect anything. So when my boss called one night, asking if I could meet a new apprentice for training at a remote site at 5 in the morning, I groaned but agreed. It was early, sure, but hours were hours and I needed the paycheck. That next morning was brutally cold, one of those bitter Michigan mornings where the wind cuts through you no matter how many layers you wear. I pulled into the lot of a sprawling, silent factory complex just before dawn. The place looked like a dead city. My breath hung in the air as I stepped out of my car, hands trembling more from the cold than fatigue, and lit a cigarette. The coffee in my thermos had already gone lukewarm. Then I saw headlights. A beat-up car rolled into the lot, crunching over the gravel. I assumed it was the new guy and took a step forward to wave him down. But then the car engine suddenly roared. The driver slammed the gas and started tearing across the lot in wide, erratic circles, the tires screeching like it was a demolition derby. I just stood there, stunned. This is the guy I'm supposed to train, I thought. A strung-out lunatic. Behind the wheel, great, just great. Eventually, the car screeched to a halt and the driver got out, slamming the door behind him. He looked around, grimacing. "This place definitely needs fixing," he rasped. His voice sounded like gravel soaked in smoke and regret. I stared at him, trying to piece him together. Paulo, I presumed. He looked like he just crawled out of a coal mine. Ashen skin, filthy clothes, and the haggard demeanor of someone who'd been through hell and hadn't quite made it back. He was probably in his mid-30s, but he looked closer to 50. Life had done a number on him. He barely topped 5 feet, and his frame was wide, bulky, not from muscle. It was around the 3rd checkpoint that I noticed the smell. It hit me like a wall. Sour, almost rotting. I tried to be discreet, turning my head away now and then, pretending to cough. I didn't want to seem rude, but God, it was bad. Like a mix of old sweat, mildew, and something I couldn't quite place, something metallic and decayed. Of course, I didn't expect a guy like Paulo to smell like aftershave and fresh laundry, but still, it lingered, like it was coming from inside him. Then the questions started. "You ever mess around with any of the girls who work here?" he asked, voice low, conspiratorial. "What?" I blinked at him, caught off guard. "No, that's not something I do." He chuckled, like it was a joke between friends. "You ever see any game on the grounds, like rabbits, deer maybe?" No, it's a factory, nothing really lives here." Paulo grunted and nodded thoughtfully like he was making mental notes. Then he shifted again. "What about fights?" he asked. "Anyone ever try to get in? You ever have to knock someone out? I mean, I bet stuff like that happens at night. Bet you've seen some wild shit." He looked at me with a strange intensity, like he was starving for the stories. I gave a non-committal shrug. "A couple drunks trying to break in once, that's about it." He pressed for more, wanted every detail. I tried to brush it off, but he lapped it up, eyes wide, grinning like a kid hearing a bedtime story. Except his bedtime stories were about violence and fear. Something about the way he leaned in, how fascinated he was. It turned my stomach. After the tour, he lingered. Most new hires thanked me and left, but not Paulo. He wanted to talk. For 30 solid minutes, he drilled me with questions about my life, my family, where I lived, how long I'd been single. He was trying to build something with me, force familiarity, and it made my skin crawl. I excused myself as soon as I could and stepped away to call my boss. I kept my voice calm but urgent. "Hey, I just finished up with Paulo. Look, I don't know about this guy. He's off. I mean, really off. Something's not right with him." There was a pause. Then my boss's voice came through, sharper than usual. "Are we still talking about this guy, Paulo?" He snapped. "I told you to give him a chance. Don't call me again unless it's an emergency." He hung up. I stood there, stunned. My boss had never spoken to me like that before. Not once. Who was Paulo to him? A friend? A relative? Why was he protecting this guy? I drove home feeling sick. I couldn't shake the image of those rashes on Paulo's arms, or the dead-eyed way his son obeyed him. I took a long, scalding shower, scrubbing myself like I could wash off the encounter. A stupid part of me even worried his condition was contagious. That's how deeply he got into my head. That night, I couldn't sleep, so I called my boss again. This time I pushed harder. I told him everything. Paulo's attitude, his questions, the way he spoke to his kids. I didn't hold back. Finally, after a long silence, my boss gave in. He agreed to transfer me to another site, said he'd handle it from there. I never saw Paulo again, and for a while that helped. Knowing I'd never have to see his scabby face or hear that cigarette-soaked voice gave me a little peace. But years later, that day still haunts me. His voice, his smell, that look in his eyes, they never really left me. Sometimes I find myself wondering about his children. Were they doomed to follow in his footsteps? Were they mocked in school, shunned, or worse? Were they being shaped into something darker, something unnatural? What if it wasn't just a bad upbringing? What if it was something else entirely? And then the thought hits me in the small hours of the night, when everything is still and quiet. What if Paulo wasn't just a strange man? What if he wasn't fully human? There was something in his eyes, something cold and ancient, like he was hiding behind a mask of flesh, and the way my boss defended him, like he knew, like they were in on something together. Looking back, I think Paulo was more than disturbed. He was dangerous. The way he enjoyed those violent stories, the way he studied me, it wasn't normal. He could have been a psychopath, maybe worse. I never found out what happened to him. I don't want to, but the idea that he's still out there, walking among us, teaching his children to blend in, to mimic normalcy, it keeps me up some nights. Because sometimes, the monsters don't hide in the dark. They wave at you in the parking lot at dawn. For most of my childhood, we lived in a secluded house at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, far from the nearest neighbors. The road curled away from a larger residential street and led to only a handful of homes. Ours sat in the middle, boxed in by trees in silence, while Mr. Smith's house stood imposingly at the top of the hill like some sort of watchtower. He'd lived there long before we moved in. I was young back then, maybe 5 or 6, and I don't remember every detail about him. But what I do remember is his face. It was the kind of face you don't forget, no matter how much you want to. Every time we passed by, he'd give us this unsettling look, like he was trying to smile but couldn't quite get it right. His eyes always lingered too long. There was something behind them, something dark and impenetrable. My parents were strict about one thing above all: never go near Mr. Smith's house. They didn't tell us exactly why at first, just that he wasn't right in the head. If he ever asked us to come inside, we were told to run, not walk away. I remember Mom's voice when she first told us. Not just firm, but anxious, like she was trying to contain something bigger than words. We didn't need convincing. That look he gave us when he was out planting flowers or fixing his car, it said enough. My sister and I made it a point to take a long detour if we ever had to walk past his place. If my sister had to go uphill alone, she'd stick to the opposite side of the road and keep her eyes straight ahead, heart pounding if she heard even the rustle of leaves. There were gaps in the story, pieces we didn't get until later. Most of what I learned came from my mom, years after we'd moved out. I remember one night I asked her, "What was the deal with Mr. Smith, really?" She looked at me for a long time before answering. Then she told me everything. Long before we moved there, when my mother was still a teenager, she had a strange encounter. She claimed that a man dressed like a civil servant would follow her around. He was always just there, in the background, watching. She tried to tell her own mother, but it was brushed off. My mom had always been strong-willed, and no one took her paranoia seriously. Now she's sure that man was Mr. Smith. Turns out, Mr. Smith and my mom's family had once been close. He worked as a prison officer back then. But soon, disturbing allegations surfaced, things too awful to say out loud. According to the rumors, he and another officer had been doing terrible things, abusing inmates and even worse, harming young girls. Mr. Smith denied it all and managed to shift the blame onto the other man, who later died under mysterious circumstances. Charges never stuck, but he lost his job and any remaining trust from those who once called him a friend. As Mom told me this, I felt my skin crawl. It was as if the shadows in the corners of my childhood bedroom had grown thicker, more alive. He had 2 daughters. The older one was unstable. She struggled with severe mental health issues. The younger daughter, on the other hand, always claimed her father had never harmed her. She grew up to be a bright, cheerful woman. Mr. Smith's wife stood by him through it all, adamantly defending his innocence. Because of the older daughter's instability, her children, Mr. Smith's grandchildren, were sent to live with him and his wife. That was around the same time we moved into the cul-de-sac. One of the other neighbors, an older woman who'd lived there for decades, quietly pulled my mom aside not long after we settled in. She told her to keep us, my sister and me, far away from the Smiths. She'd heard too much, seen too much. My parents were horrified. The idea that this man, who lived just a few houses up, could be a threat to their children became something like an obsession. And yet, outwardly, he was friendly. Too friendly. He'd wave when we passed, sometimes stop to chat with my dad. Once, he even offered to babysit us. I still remember how cold my mother's voice went when she told him, "That won't be necessary." Afterward, she locked eyes with my dad, and nothing more was said. But the fear was palpable. Then, one morning in 1988, something happened that stuck with me. My dad was heading to work when he bumped into a young woman named Diana, who lived down the street. Always the chatty type, he asked her where she was off to so early. "I'm going up to Mr. Smith's," she said casually, giving his wife a bit of a break with the kids. Dad froze. He didn't say much, but I remember he came home looking pale. The idea that someone, anyone, would willingly let their kids stay under that roof, given the whispers, the warnings, it shook my parents to their core. At that time, Mr. Smith's granddaughter was in the same kindergarten class as my sister. His grandson was the same age as me. Seeing his granddaughter, the way she smiled, the way she talked like any normal kid, it was unsettling. Like watching someone perform happiness while standing on a trapdoor. Looking back, I still don't know what was true and what was rumor. But I know how it felt. Like we were living next door to something hidden and dangerous, something that wore the mask of normalcy but never quite fit it right. Every day my mother watched that little girl, Mr. Smith's granddaughter, walk into school with her tiny backpack and soft smile, and every day her heart sank. Knowing what that child might be exposed to behind closed doors filled her with a gnawing dread. It wasn't just worry, it was anguish, a persistent, suffocating fear that something unspoken and horrible was happening in that house up the hill. My parents couldn't just sit by anymore. They talked about it late at night when they thought we were asleep, voices low and tense behind closed doors. My mom said she couldn't live with herself if something happened and she hadn't tried to stop it. My dad, always cautious, was afraid of what might happen if they spoke up. Mr. Smith was unpredictable, dangerous maybe. But silence, they decided, was worse. What made it even harder was the way the rest of the neighborhood behaved. My mother once said it felt like everyone had crawled under a rock, pretending not to see what was right in front of them. She called it cowardice. No one wanted to stir up trouble. No one wanted to be the one to stand up. So my parents did the only thing they could think of. They went to my sister's head teacher. Quietly, carefully, they explained what they suspected. The teacher didn't say much, but his face changed. He made a few calls and soon Somehow, word got out that it was my parents who had made the report. My mom suspected it was Lana's family, another neighbor who was always far too friendly with the Smiths. Either way, the fallout was immediate. Mr. Smith changed overnight. He stopped pretending. If my mother passed him alone on the street, he'd snarl insults under his breath or worse, scream them out loud. My father, usually calm, even cheerful, was greeted every morning with shouted obscenities as he got into his car. Once, Mr. Smith deliberately swerved his vehicle across the center line, veering dangerously close to us as we walked home. My mother clutched my sister's hand so hard she left nail marks. He told my father, once, that he had ruined his life. Called him a filthy coward, said he'd pay for what he'd done. And my dad, who's one of the kindest, most even-tempered men I've ever known, just stood there, jaw clenched, not saying a word. But I saw the way he watched the road. After that, how he double-checked the locks at night. The tension was unbearable. My mother began talking about moving. She wanted out. Away from the shadows, from the looks, from the fear that any day now Mr. Smith might snap. At first, my dad hesitated. He said we shouldn't be the ones who had to leave. But in the end, the safety of his family outweighed his pride. We moved to a house in the countryside not long after, surrounded by wide fields and quiet skies. It should have felt like peace, but something followed us, something that couldn't be left behind so easily. That's when the rest of the truth started to surface. After we moved, other women, girls who were now grown, began coming forward. Diana, the neighbor who had once gone to give Mrs. Smith a break, was among the first. She and several others told their stories about what Mr. Smith had done to them when they were children, about the fear, the shame, the manipulation. Their testimonies were brave, devastating, and this time no one could sweep it under the rug. He was taken to court again, but what they found during the investigation was worse than anything anyone could have imagined. I was too young to understand what was happening at the time, and my parents tried to shield me from the details. But my mother has never truly recovered from what was revealed. She still carries it, like a wound that never quite healed. In Mr. Smith's basement, the police found a diary. Not just notes or confessions, fantasies, obsessions, plans. It was filled with vile, calculated thoughts, proof that he wasn't just a predator. He was something far more dangerous, a psychopath who had been hiding in plain sight for years. And in the pages of that diary, he wrote about us. He wrote about my sister and me, described the way we looked when we played in our yard, the sound of our laughter, how he watched us, how he dreamed of luring us into his home. They found photographs too, taken without our knowledge, filed and organized in his desk drawer, like we were part of some twisted collection. The truth was undeniable. The danger hadn't been imagined. It hadn't been paranoia or neighborhood gossip. It had been real, tangible, inches away from us every day. Mr. Smith is gone now, behind bars where he can't hurt anyone else. I know it's harsh to say, but I'm glad. I'm grateful he was stopped before he could do worse. But even now, even with miles and years between us, he casts a shadow over my life. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I see him. That grin, tight-lipped, too wide. The cold stare, it's burned into my memory. I can still feel the weight of his gaze on my back. I don't think I'll ever forget it. And I don't think I'll ever stop wondering what might have happened if we hadn't moved. If my parents hadn't spoken up. If the photographs had become more than photographs. Some nights I still dream of that house at the top of the hill.